we will talk about the promises that the U.S. President Donald Trump made and delivered, the successes and challenges on the eve of Mr. Trump's first anniversary in the White House, right after this break. Yes, and you are watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. It has been a year since Donald Trump raised his right hand in an oath to become the 45th President of the United States. Over the year, there have been huge changes, to say the least, in American diplomatic and domestic policies. What has been the impact of the Trump administration on Washington politics, the U.S. economy, trade and diplomacy with the rest of the world? Before the discussion with our panelists, let's take a look at this.
It's been nearly a year since Donald Trump entered the White House.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
America First began with the withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Deal, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the UNESCO. He tried to push for his controversial immigration ban on Muslim-majority countries, but he's still nowhere near building a wall along the U.S. southern border with Mexico. He did deliver on another campaign promise.
Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
America First, the battle cry of the tweeter-in-chief with probably the least political experience. Mr. Trump was quick to trumpet the impact of his policy on the U.S. economy.
The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits just hit a 45-year low.
But some economists are cautious with 2017's economic growth, as it may damage both the Chinese and American economies in the long run. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Mr. Trump for the first time in April last year, a good sign, but the ups also came with some downs, like the threat of a trade war. U.S. economic ties with China were also tested when Mr. Trump, on numerous occasions, turned political cooperation over the DPRK, a bargaining chip for trade deals.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Mr. Trump's tweets often determine U.S. foreign policy, such as his war of words with DPRK leader Kim Jong-un. But the most contentious relations are with Russia, the one constant that hounded the Trump administration with an investigation into possible Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Overall, Mr. Trump has his work cut out for him nearly a year into his administration.
What a year for President Donald Trump, and certainly for the rest of the world. For more on Trump's first anniversary in the office, we are joined in our Beijing studio, Rong Ying, who is Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir. Also joining us in Washington, D.C., Douglas Paul, Vice President of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Welcome, sir. And in Iowa, U.S. as well, Timothy Hagel, a professor of political science at the University of Iowa. We are having a very strong panel today. I want to start with you, Professor Hagel, since you are talking about domestic politics. Let's start with you. A lot of roller coasting. I probably feel that, and the rest of the world as well. But the question is, what word would you use to describe it? What word would you use to describe it? Professor Hagel.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Professor Hagel. The question
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
After 1 year, what adjective would you use to describe this presidency?
What adjective would you use to describe this presidency?
Well, President Trump's presidency in the first year has had sort of a mixed review, as was indicated in the report that you ran earlier. He has some successes, obviously the Tax Reform Act. He's done some things that have kept the economy going, have given people hope that the economy is going to get better for a lot of people, not just the people at the top. but as also indicated, there have been some bumps along the road, both in terms of international sorts of situations. His view of how he conducts diplomacy is quite different from previous presidents, and we still have conflicts going on with other nations, and particularly the DPRK.
All right, Trump wraps up a year in the office. Let's see how he's doing. The lowest average approval rating, according to the latest report. That is according to the polling by Gallup, which shows that he has averaged just a 39% approval rating since his inauguration. The previous low was held by Bill Clinton, whose first-year average stood 10 points higher than Trump's at 49%. Of course, you got the other numbers coming from other presidents. Those presidents could do better, sometimes worse, in the other years of their presidency. Having said that, though, let me go to you, Mr. Rong, here in Beijing. How do you, from outside, see that president?
I would just say it's quite difficult to give a grade to Trump presidency, because it all depends on what kind of a metric you are taking. If you're
very diplomatic, right?
Yeah, if a traditional metric, like the opinion poll we're talking about, is, I think, is the lowest. I got a different, even lower sort of approval rate. I heard it's 35% approval and 56 disapproval. He's the lowest in the post-World War. But if you look at his track record, if you look at the expectations and look at how much or changes or the shift that has been taken, brought to the White House, I think he's doing relatively...
You have to elaborate on that, because I'm sure a lot of viewers internationally and also in the United States do not necessarily agree with you that Trump has achieved a lot. Probably you have to explain what exactly you meant.
No, I'm not saying he has achieved a lot. I'm saying that he could have done much worse. That's the point I would like to make. But to be fair, I think it's quite mixed, and it will still take some time to look at. Some, if you even look at the domestically, some of the agendas he achieved, and which I think the previous Republican administration has not been able to do that. For example, the so-called Obamacare, the tax cut issues, and so on and so forth, and the deregulation issues and others. Diplomatically, I think, of course, he's done a lot of damage. I mean, by withdrawing the TPPs. I mean, the 3 days after this, coming into the office, and he also made a lot of twists. I mean, very. Some of them are very worrying or cause a lot of, apprehensions. But in the end, I think, as far as I can see, he's quite, in a way that is not as being unpredictable or it could have, as I said, it could have done worse.
It really depends on what kind of metrics you're using, as you said, sir, earlier. But Professor Hagel, here's the thing. When we talk about President Trump, people, shrug it off, saying, this is a guy that makes politics with entertainment. But on the other hand, if you look at the way that he's communicating with his constituencies, it has been quite effective. So does he provide you with any food for thought as to what kinds of political leadership these days people are looking for, and the qualities, the shifts of qualities of political leadership that people are looking for? Professor Hagel.
I think that's probably true, and what we apparently found in the United States was that the people generally were very unhappy with their political leaders, that for whatever reason things weren't getting done in Congress. The president seemed to be stymied. President Obama came in, made all kinds of promises, but found that he wasn't able to work with Congress even when he had a majority, although he did get his signature issue through the Affordable Care Act. But in terms of many other things, he had great problems, and even more so after Republicans took control of Congress. And people were just getting tired of it, that they thought that they were being lied to and so forth, and so as a result, they looked for something different. Now, of course, the 2016 election was basically a one-off in the sense that because of the nature of the two candidates, that's what allowed Trump to win. That if perhaps Democrats had nominated somebody other than Hillary Clinton, that maybe Trump wouldn't have won, so they would have gone, they being the voters, would have gone for somebody more traditional. But as it is, this is what we've got right now. Now, will we stay with that in the future? My guess is probably not. that will go back eventually, if not in 2020 and 2024, to somebody more traditional. But at least for right now, this is what we have, and this is what we need to deal with.
Well, people wonder whether it's a hiccup in the history of U.S. presidency, or actually it is the direction that the U.S. policy is likely to do, and also how U.S. is seeing itself. And here comes to the ultimate question, isn't it, Mr. Rong? That is, how the U.S. is looking at itself, what role it would play internationally. Particularly for the Chinese, I guess it's very relevant, this question. What is your reading of that through Trump presidency, at least first year?
I think the U.S. in general, as far as I can see, is that they all feel that there's something, must be something wrong. And they are looking for, as I think the previous speakers talking, they are looking for something different, or looking for an option that would help U.S. to address both domestic issues and more also as importantly, I think, internationally.
Right.
I think Trump provides an option that he feels would help U.S. to address issues. So in his inaugural address, he announced that America First approach, a vision. And he feels that U.S. deserves, and that would help U.S. to address these issues. But in the end, it seems that in practice, it caused a lot of problems, uncertainties. Not only, I think, the elites, the establishment in U.S., but more importantly, is the allies, and of course, the world at large. So I would say that possibly it's a kind of experience, it's a kind of attempt by,
But you know, how would you know? Because the U.S. economy is getting better. You know, when you look at the numbers, jobs are being provided as well. So the way that the U.S. is looking at itself, America First, maybe it's not favored by the rest of the world, but it might be, as many Americans see, to the American national interest. If that would be the case, and given what politics is today, how could you expect that to change, even for the next president who is different from Donald Trump? But maybe that will still be the theme of politics for the future. Mr. Rong.
Oh yeah, that's certainly it's a big question, I think,
That's right.
facing a Trump presidency or President Trump, if you want to, run for the elections in 2020. And by that time, hopefully, the economy of U.S. is doing as well as today, which is a big question mark. And then even if it's doing as well, then how much President Trump can claim the credit for that, because there are
He's already doing that. Yeah. He's already doing that. You know better than I do, Professor Hagel, about that. But having said that, though, for international relations, it's a different story compared to, let's just see, the rosy economic growth picture. So what the U.S. is going to do, particularly now when you have a very weak State Department, when you still have many of the vacancies of the diplomatic positions not necessarily being filled. Obviously, you have a bigger voice coming from the White House, and also a bigger voice coming from the President himself when it comes to directions of U.S. foreign policy. Professor Hagel, what is your judgment of this direction? What would that mean?
Well, to a certain extent, the direction is a bit of a holdover from the Obama administration. You mentioned the fact that there are a lot of vacancies, and that means that it doesn't mean that things aren't getting done. What it means is that career State Department officials are handling those duties, and they would tend to perhaps continue the Obama administration's policies. That doesn't necessarily, isn't necessarily consistent with the Trump administration's desires, and that causes a bit of a conflict, and sometimes there's mixed messages coming between the President and the State Department and so forth, and so that has to be worked out. But hopefully those vacancies will be filled, and the Trump administration, after initially focusing more perhaps on domestic policy, can, in the remaining years of its first administration, and we'll see if Trump gets reelected, of course, but at least in the remaining 3 years, see if it can then perhaps focus a bit more on the international side of things.
I see. We also have Mr. Paul with us on the phone. We were struggling with him on the video. But okay, we haven't got it done yet. Let's come back to you, Mr. Rong, about further on the diplomatic side, you see issues relating to diplomacy, several areas. One is hotspot issues, DPRK, for example. That's one of them, and the Middle East as well. And you see also longer-term issues about how one country positions itself internationally, how it's contributing or withdrawing from international governance. You also see its important bilateral relations, such as right now, China and the United States. One could argue it's one of the most important bilateral relations in the world. So how, on those very different levels, do you see President Trump, his presidency, so far, and its impact?
On the bilateral relation between China and the U.S., I would say, to be fair, they are being, even though it started, with quite a rocky one, but so far I see that the presidency is dealing with the relationship pretty well. And over the past 1 year, certainly if you look at the two presidents, President Xi and President Trump, we had more than two meetings actually. And the Mar-a-Lago meetings was very successful, but of course the visit to Beijing, China, President Trump was accorded the so-called state visit plus, was, I think, helpful in a sense to stabilize the relationship. And overall, I think the relationship remains on steady and sort of footing, while with the full framework, full dialogue, mechanism that serves as a pillar. And I think but of course there are other issues that that may disturb the relationship.
We'll have you, Mr. Rong, to come back and discuss about that, because Mr. Paul now could join us as a very well-known scholar from the United States about U.S.-China relations. Mr. Paul, my question same to you as to Mr. Rong. That is, different layers, bilateral relations, hotspot issues, and how the U.S. is dealing with the greater regional issues such as the Middle East and the Asia Pacific. How do you see this presidency's impact and his way of doing things? Mr. Paul. Do we have a problem? Do we have a problem? Mr. Paul, can you hear me? Can you hear me? We still have a problem over there. Well, we hope more can be done technically in order to get across to him. But I want to continue about that, Mr. Hagel, here in the United States, in Iowa. Tell me about how the international relations, the presidency's policies, and the image it projects as a result would influence his domestic agenda. Help us know more about that, Professor Hagel.
Well, in terms of the relationship between the domestic and the international, the domestic, of course, side of things is important, particularly for voters, especially the economy, sorts of things that are going on. And as we come into get close to the 2018 midterm elections, that will be particularly the case. But those issues are also related to the international side of things, particularly with the economic concerns. One of the things that Trump talked about a lot had to do with bringing jobs back, bringing their money back to the United States, and we've seen some companies begin to do that. And to that extent, then it will affect trade relations with various companies along those lines. And as much as maybe initially that might hurt some relations in terms of the economics and trade and so forth, hopefully in the long run it provides a more stable and more enduring kind of relationship with a lot of countries. And of course Trump is looking to deal more bilaterally with nations, and so that may help his hand, strengthen his hand in making those agreements.
It's already 1 year. We already gone through that. Let's see what's going to happen to the rest of the few years of his presidency. Promise or not? It's unknown. But for now, I want to thank actually the three of you. Douglas Paul, who has been earlier connected to us, and Timothy Hagel and Rong Ying. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me for this discussion. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. And have a great weekend, everyone.